Good morning, everyone. My name is Savannah Baltera, and I am the chair of the Administrative Faculty Committee here at UNLV, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Administrative Faculty Development Day. We're so happy that you've joined us virtually today. Administrative Faculty Development Day seeks to create a space for faculty, staff, and students to share strategies and initiatives and create discussions that promote health, hope, and humanity across the students and colleagues we serve across campus. The Planning Committee was very intentional in choosing the keynote and breakout sessions that fit into the theme Health, Hope, and Humanity. From the uncertainty and pain caused by the coronavirus pandemic to the systemic racism that plagues this country, the events of the 2020 calendar year have brought on heightened levels of concern, frustration, and outrage, as well as a collective call for people to play an active role in leading positive change at UNLV. Administrative faculty at UNLV can play a significant and intentional role in promoting justice, diversity and inclusion, and anti-racist practices through the work we do within the UNLV community. So this is how this day is going to go, because it is a little bit different than years past. Of course, we would love to all be together in the ballroom and then go to our breakout sessions, but we can't do that. So this is how the day is going to flow. After my introduction, we are going to hear from President Whitfield to give a few remarks, and then we will award the AFC Professional Development Awards for 2020. At about 9:30 a.m., we will welcome Kevin Hines for our keynote address. And then at 10:40, you will transition over to the WebEx meeting invites you received for the two breakout sessions at 10:45 and 11:45, respectively. And if you are having any issues with technology or figuring how to access what you think you should be in, if you just Google chat AFC at unlv.edu, we have AFC members monitoring that chat in real time, and they'll be able to assist you. Now, I want to just talk a little bit about what the Administrative Faculty Committee is and how you can get involved. The Administrative Faculty Committee's vision is to create a culture of inclusiveness and growth by fostering meaningful collaborations and to provide opportunities for administrative faculty to participate in rewarding professional development endeavors, such as this and other, right now, virtual professional development opportunities. We do meet virtually via WebEx on the second Tuesday of every month at 10:30 a.m. Our meetings are public and open to anyone to attend. If you're interested in attending a meeting, if you email that same email, afc@unlv.edu, we can add you to the WebEx meeting invite. And our meetings through May 2021 will remain virtual. So we invite anyone to attend those meetings and to get involved on the committee. We have lots of subcommittees on the AFC. One of those subcommittees is the Community Engagement Subcommittee, and they are working on developing a virtual fundraising opportunity in the spring of 2021 as we continue to move forward UNLV's mission by supporting one of the 4 core themes, fostering community partnerships. And we hope to include as many administrative faculty members as possible in the decision-making process for this virtual fundraising event. The community partner or the cause that we end up choosing has yet to be determined, and that's where you all come in. We'd like your help in deciding where our focus should lie. There are so many options of nonprofit groups in Las Vegas, in Southern Nevada, that we can choose from. So after this event, in addition to the event assessment survey, you're going to also receive a 2-question survey asking you to give your opinion about what organization you think the AFC should fundraise for. If you could fill that out and also encourage your colleagues who maybe aren't here today or weren't able to log on this early to also fill out the survey, that would be amazing. And we hope that you will consider becoming involved in the Administrative Faculty Committee by attending our monthly meetings or joining events like today. So it is now my pleasure to welcome UNLV President, Dr. Keith Whitfield, to say a few remarks and to kick off the day. Welcome to President Whitfield.
Well, good morning. I'm not hearing anything back. Oh, that's right. You guys are out there in TV land. I'm so glad that you tuned in today to be able to get the most that you can out of being part of the UNLV community. I want to give a special thanks to the Administrative Faculty Committee for setting this wonderful day up. Creating connections with people now is probably more important than ever before. And one of the ways that I've been able to connect with some of you all is through a listening tour that just recently ended. I do want to give a shout out to administrative faculty because you guys showed up in the biggest numbers of any other group. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful learning lesson for me, and it helps me to think about how we're going to plan the future. Now, I know that these times are hard. I know that these times are stressful and isolating. But this is just one way that you can make sure that you stay connected with your university community. Also, at these times, we need to be inspired. People keep talking about kind of COVID tiredness or COVID exhaustion, and that's okay. But we've got to make sure that we find the moments, the times, and the people that we can be inspired by. Our guest speaker today, Kevin Hines, is just one of those people. And I sure hope that you tune in and listen to his story and find your own valuable nugget of what you can apply to your own life. Lastly, I want to talk about what's coming up, which is Thanksgiving, a time for us to be thankful for the things that we have. Right now, we're fighting a horrible pandemic, and it's probably more important than ever before to think about all the things that we have in this life and to appreciate them and the people around us. But make sure that you're staying safe with those people around you. Adjust your Thanksgiving to be a little bit different maybe than it's ever been before. Try to wear your masks even when you're with close family. Social distance. Heck, me and my family, we're going to Zoom call. So try to find great ways to be able to celebrate this wonderful holiday, but please stay safe. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, President Whitfield, for being here today. We're so happy to have you here at UNLV. Now it's time to recognize the AFC award winners from both late 2019 and early 2020. So every month, AFC takes nominations and chooses one administrative faculty member to receive Administrative Faculty Member of the Month. Up on your screen right now are the winners from the end of 2019 and January through October for 2020. And I want to take a moment to congratulate these monthly winners. We always need nominations for monthly awards, and so you can find the application on our website. The award nominations for the previous month are always due around the 15th of the month. And so this is our call right now to have you nominate your colleagues who are doing amazing work on the campus for these monthly awards. Next up, I'm honored to announce this year's recipients of the AFC Professional Development Awards. The following individuals will receive funding to be used for virtual or in-person professional development. The recipients are David Beasley, Sarah Daly, Lois Peretti, Brandy Smith, and Ann Wilson. Congratulations to you five. You will be notified, if you haven't been already, via email on how to access your awarded funds. And even though 2020 is a strange time and we're in an odd time of professional development, we do want you all to know that we are hoping to support professional development for administrative faculty, even virtually. So even if you're not attending conferences in person right now, we know that there is a lot of organizations and national umbrella organizations who are doing virtual conferences. And so we want to make sure that you know that we're here to provide some of that for you. Next up, I want to recognize our 2019 Administrative Faculty of the Year recipient, Missy Arendash. Missy was awarded this back in the spring, but we weren't able to formally recognize her due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I wanted to take a moment to do that. If you've ever been impressed by a UNLV alumni event, then you may be familiar with the work of Missy Arendash, Associate Director for Programs and Events within the Division of Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement. In this role, Missy helps plan and execute UNLV traditions that include Rebel Homecoming, the annual Alumni Awards, and the UNLV Foundation Annual Dinner. Colleagues know Missy as a problem solver, a fantastic MC, and someone with an unparalleled passion for events. Join me in congratulating Missy. And congratulations again to all of the award recipients, and thank you to the AFC Awards Subcommittee chaired by Lisa Davis for having the difficult task of choosing the winners. So before we move on to the next portion of our event, I want to talk about some of the initiatives that AFC has been working on this past year and talk a little bit more about the subcommittees that we have. We have 4 subcommittees on the AFC. You've heard about a couple of them already. We have the Awards Subcommittee, the Community Engagement Subcommittee, and then we also have the Development Day Subcommittee that assisted in planning this event. And then we also have a Bylaws Committee that's in charge of our internal documents. As an administrative faculty member at UNLV, you do not have to be an elected AFC member to serve on one of these subcommittees. So if helping choose award winners for AFC is something that you're interested in, if you're really interested in governing documents and writing bylaws, if you are interested in helping us plan virtual and hopefully eventually in-person events like this, those are all things that you can do as a non-elected member of the AFC. I know I've been saying this email a lot, but the best way to get involved with the AFC is to email afc@unlv.edu, and we can happily plug you in to whichever subcommittee that you are most interested in. And then I want to talk about how you can be elected to be on the AFC. So there are 21 elected seats that represent all of the different administrative areas on campus. Things like the Division of Student Affairs. All of the academic colleges have administrative faculty who work in them, so they all have representation. The Division Finance and Business, Athletics, the Division of Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement. All of those have elected terms. When you're elected to the AFC, you do serve a 3-year term, but a lot of times we have people who maybe leave the university or have to change roles, so we have vacancies all of the time. This is my call to you the next time that you see an email asking for nominations to be on the AFC, that you respond to them. We love an election that has more than one person, so we love to have lots of choices in that democratic process. So when you see those come across, we just hope that you will consider self-nominating or nominating one of your colleagues so that you can be a voting member of the AFC. So I want to talk a little bit about how the AFC fits into the Faculty Senate and overall governance, because one of the things that AFC has been focusing on this year is being a partner in shared governance across campus. So the Faculty Senate represents both academic and administrative faculty. And so there are faculty senators who are administrative faculty who sit on the faculty senate with our academic faculty colleagues. And so that is one way that we're doing shared governance. But AFC has really been working this year, especially with coronavirus and being responsive to our constituents. We've been working a lot closer with our colleagues on the classified staff council and also with the students in both CSUN student government for the undergraduate students and the graduate students in GPSA, in the Graduate and Professional Student Association. So the AFC wants to be a good partner with all of these governing bodies because we believe that if we're working together in shared governance, that we can do better for our entire community. An example of that is today's keynote address. We have sent this out to not just administrative faculty, but we shared it with our academic faculty, with our classified staff, and with students because we know that the message today that Kevin Hines and then ultimately our panel is going to bring us is going to resonate with everyone. And so that's just one example of shared governance that the AFC is focusing on. AFC also wants to be more visible. We know that we can do a much better job in getting out there and getting people to know who we are, get people to know who your representatives are. And our website team and AFC has been doing a good job of keeping that website up to date so that you know exactly, like if you work in the College of Sciences, you know who you can talk to. If you work in athletics, you know who is a person that you can go to. And so we just want to get our name out there. We want to be as involved as possible to help serve the administrative faculty here at UNLV. Before I transition over to LaToya to let her tell a little bit about her story, I know that we probably had some people join late, so I want to talk again about how the day is going to flow and how to access both the keynote that's going to happen here in a few minutes and then also the breakout sessions. So right now, hopefully you're watching us on YouTube or on the Vimeo live stream. And that's going to be how you're going to watch Kevin Hines speak. There is a chat box on YouTube, on the YouTube stream only. There is not a chat box on Vimeo. And so if you have any questions for Kevin Hines, or if you have any questions for our representative that you'll meet later from Counseling and Psychological Services, you're just going to place that question in the YouTube chat box, and then we will get that over to LaToya, our moderator. After the keynote ends at about, the keynote and the Q&A ends at about 10:40, that is when you will move to your 10:45 breakout session, which again should be in your email. You should have a WebEx meeting invite for one for 10:45 and one for 11:45. And so if you just go to your email and do that. Now, if you have any questions, again, the best thing to do is to GChat or email afc@unlv.edu. So we're going to take a very quick break as we transition over to getting Kevin Hines onto our live stream. So we're going to go ahead and turn on just some PowerPoint pictures. So don't go away and just stay on, and we will be back in just a few minutes. Thanks so much. All right, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us. Virtual events are super fun. So now I would like to invite AFC Vice Chair 1, Latoya Burtis, to the stage to introduce our keynote speaker, Kevin Hines. Welcome to Latoya.
Thank you, Savannah, for the introduction. Before I get started, I do want to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Savannah mentioned earlier that you would need to be on the YouTube live streaming so that you could chat. I also want to point out that we are going to have a link and a QR code, so you can click on the link or scan the QR code to take the survey when this session is over. And I know we're all at that point with not another survey, but I do have to tell you, being on the development committee, it's a lot of work, and we really rely on the feedback from all the participants so that when we plan for next year, we can make it even bigger and better. Also, too, before I get started with my story, I want to let y'all know that our AFC committee has put in a lot of work to make this happen, and we have a technical crew that has also been quite amazing. So I don't want the show to go on and we forget to thank them. So again, thank you all for your hard work. So now, before we get to rolling, I gotta tell you a little bit of history about how we got here today. So I personally was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. Those that live there, we are no stranger to darkness. Typically, over half the year, most of our day is spent in the dark. So if you think about it, many of the people in Alaska are not strangers to depression, alcoholism, and domestic violence. And sometimes I think living in Alaska might have been what led me to work in the mental health field. So again, I worked in the mental health field for about 10 years, and that was before I came to UNLV. So when I arrived here, after a few years of being here, I found out that they now offer a mental health first aid certification course. I've got a supportive team, a supportive supervisor. I took the certification and soon became an instructor. Well, during one of the courses, there was a video that they showed, and they broke it up in clips, and it was about Kevin Hines. And I don't know what it was about that video, but it rocked my core. And for those of y'all that know me, there's not much that rocks my core. So when I got out of the class, I was shouting from the rooftops to anyone who would listen about Kevin Hines' story, sharing, everyone needs to hear it, everyone needs to take the certification, even if it's just to get through that video. So fast forward to where we are now. I've been working on Development Day and getting Kevin Hines here for about a year. And again, I'm quite excited that all this came through. So after my certification, it happened to be about a week later, I met Richard Egan. He works at the Office of Prevention for Suicide here in Las Vegas. And I'm telling him about this video because, again, I'm looking for anyone who will listen. And Richard is like, oh, yeah, I know Kevin. And since then, it was on. He connected me with Kevin and his wife, and here we are today. So I also want to point out that 2020 has definitely been a year of chaos. But at the same time, it has been a time that conversations have been sparked about racial injustice and social injustice, and they're conversations that should have started long ago. But I believe mental health and suicide are also conversations that need to spark. I'm hoping that today's keynote speaker sheds a little light on mental health issues, in that it offers a different lens and a different perspective for everyone attending today. It is my honor to introduce Kevin Hines.
Thank you so much for that kind and wonderful introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And let's get right into it. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Were the only words I desperately needed to hear the day I found myself standing atop the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, believing beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had not one other course of action to take, but to die by these two hands from lethal emotional pain. I believed I was useless. I felt I had no value. I thought my family hated me and wanted me gone. I felt a burden to all who loved me. I felt completely alone, surrounded by a sea of people who loved me. On September 25th of the year 2000, I would attempt to take my life. I would attempt to die by suicide from lethal emotional pain in a way that is 99% lethal. 99% of the people who attempted in the way I did never again get to share their stories. In the 84 years that the Golden Gate Bridge has been up, Only 1% have survived that fall. Roughly 39 people in 84 years. I'm so lucky and blessed to be alive and blessed to be here with all of you, even virtually. I wish we could be here in person, but since this is the only way to do it, I'm glad that we're together in this moment, in this time. I found myself atop the Golden Gate Bridge because of an epic and unrelenting lethal emotional pain. The term coined by my friend Dr. John Draper of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It couldn't be more apropos. Lethal emotional pain is what drives people to suicide and drives people to attempt, for that matter. And one of the things we've learned from attempt survivors from all over the world is that they've recounted just what I recounted after my attempt. The millisecond my hands left the rail at the Golden Gate Bridge, the millisecond my legs went over it, I had an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life, but it was too late. So many people around the world have recounted these same things by attempts of all means, that on the instant they thought it was too late, they regretted their actions. Suicidal actions are not so much a decision as one would decide to have a slice of pizza or decide to take a new job. They're more compulsions to take your life because of an epic pain that you don't believe you can get through. Imagine, let me ask you a question. What is the one thing you want to happen when you find yourselves in excruciating physical pain? What do you want that pain to do? I'll give you a moment. I imagine you might be over there across from this screen saying, I want that pain to end, stop, or go away. That's physical pain. I argue that brain pain is at the very least 300,000 times worse than any physical pain I've ever experienced. But in order to do this story, like any story, any justice, we have to stop here and go back, all the way back to the very beginning, the day I was born. August 30th, 1981, in the great city of San Francisco in the beautiful state of California, born to biological parents Marcia Silvera and Martino Perales. Martino was half Mexican and half Italian, and Marcia was Jamaican, Arawak Indian, Scottish, Irish, English, and Black. And she and Martino fell madly in love in San Francisco in the 1970s, and they had 2 infant boys, me and my brother. My biological name was not Kevin Hines. That's my adopted name. My biological name was Giovanni Gabriel Prasad Perales. Say that 10 times fast. But somehow my brother's name was just Jordash. Where are his 4 names? Nonetheless, Martino and Marcia had no feasible legal income. They had to hustle to survive. We were born in severe poverty. We were dealing with serious childhood infant trauma. My birth mom and dad would leave me and my brother unattended on seedy motel beds next to dangerous drug paraphernalia, sharp metal objects had we touched could have killed us, over concrete slab floors had we fallen to would have cracked our heads open. They would leave us unattended to go do score or sell drugs. One fateful day, one seedy motel clerk made his most unseedy decision. He heard our screams and our cries in his mind one too many times, and he called the police. And the police came in with Child Protective Services, and they swooped us up, and they placed us immediately into the system, the foster care system in San Francisco, a system that was in shambles, a system that allowed kids to age out to 18 into homelessness or allowed other kids to be abused and neglected by the very foster parents set to protect them. A system, for all the good it's done in this country, still allows for both of those things to occur today. We bounced around from home to home, having a new mom and dad every couple of weeks or days. No stability, certainly neglect. In one of those homes, we both got a vicious strain of bronchitis, and my only full-blooded brother, Jordash, died. People have said to me quite callously so as an adult, Kevin, why does that matter? You were an infant. How did that affect you? But you're educated. You know the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are the most crucial for their ability to connect, adapt, attach, and be well in any future. And if the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are filled with nothing but consistent trauma, at some point, someone's got to give, and they're going to have a hell of a hard time. As an infant, I developed a severe detachment disorder from reality and abandonment issues that follow me until today. I bounced around from home to home into 4 or 5 homes until I landed in the home of Peter and Deborah Muller. Peter was in the Army. Debbie was a housewife. And Peter often had to be restationed. And Debbie and Peter were a transitional home for kids. That means they had many kids in at the same time, boys and girls of all ages, 3 or 4 little girls, 4 or 5 little boys, and me. And one fateful day, a beautiful woman named Deborah Joan Hines walked in their door. Now, you know my last name is Hines, so spoiler alert, this works out. But Debbie Hines walked in their door, fully expecting to take home a little girl to be the sister of Elizabeth Catherine, the girl she and Patrick Kevin Hines had already taken in. They wanted to give Elizabeth a sister. Do I look like a sister to you? Well, at that moment in time, when Debbie walked into the Muller's home, the first thing she saw on the carpeted floor before her was redheaded, wavy-haired Giovanni with my famous red rubber ducky overalls. And she said in her journal of those days, which is how I know this story, that was the moment she fell in love. And she went back to Pat Hines, and he said, let's do it. Let's take him in. Why? Because he needs us. And I desperately needed them. And they took me in at 9 months of age. The problem? I was violently ill all day, every day. Sick as a dog. All day, every day. You see, in my formative months, I've been fed what my birth parents could steal. Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk was my first diet. I had a distended belly filled with liquid and a bruise from the top of my sternum to the bottom of my abdomen from being malnourished for so long. And when I got to Pat and Debbie Hines' house, I was very, very ill. No doctor could tell Pat and Debbie what was wrong with their new-to-be son. Doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, $1 million workup, no one could tell them what was wrong. Until one doctor came forward and said that Patrick and Deborah, there's nothing physically wrong with this child. It's all emotional, 9 months of age. It was the furthest thing from the truth. My gut to brain health was very, very poor. Your gut biomes are connected directly to your brain chemistry. And when you're eating poor foods or poor nutrition as an infant, it severely affects your brain and your brain's ability to function. And so that's why I was so sick. But they didn't have that science back then. Growing up in the Hines home after this period of time was a beautiful thing. Because after that 30 days of being sick, Debbie came to my crib. She leaned in and she said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. But if you don't knock this off, we're going to have to give you back, which is a complete contradiction. But that was the first night in 30 days that both Debbie and I slept soundly, as if my infant mind had fully heard and understood her words. The next morning, she came to my crib and she says, I looked up at her and I smiled. And one thing was abundantly clear. I was home and I was a Hines. And growing up there, as I said, was beautiful. We had beautiful Christmas celebrations, amazing Easters with Easter baskets, an extended family that loved us dearly. We had everything kids could ever want for. Pat and Debbie Hines could have had natural born children, but they opted to adopt 3 kids from 3 different families into one and make a melting pot of a family. Me, I'm mixed. My brother's black. My sister's white. Pat and Debbie are Irish and German. People who saw us walking down the street were definitely confused, but that's their personal problem. We were happy, filled with hope. Some restaurants wouldn't even allow us in to eat at night as a family. We got up, we went somewhere else, we ate something else. We were filled with opportunity, possibility, a future, and unconditional love. And growing up in that household, I thought to myself, how can anything go sideways from here? I'm going to grow up. I'm going to get into that great school my dad's always talking about. I'm going to get that great job my parents are always speaking of. And I'm going to be successful because I've been given opportunity, but not without hard work. Pat and Debbie Hines worked tirelessly for everything they ever earned the hard way. Pat Hines' parents, much like my biological parents, had substance use disorder, primary alcoholism. They would die of liver failure, cirrhosis at very young ages, 49 and 54, leaving my father with $17 in his pocket to make his way in the world. And he would go on to become one of the most prominent San Francisco bankers of his time, all from hard work. Debbie Hines was a 45-year nurse. She just retired this year, honorable profession. She started off in the burn unit in the trauma center all those years ago. And Debbie and Pat took in us 3 kids, made us their children, and gave us a life worth living. I'll be frank, we lived a privileged life, but because of how hard they worked to get to that position. And I really didn't believe that anything could go south. I didn't see what was coming next that could have happened. I didn't see it coming at all. It hit me like the broadside of a truck. At 17 and a half, I found myself having paranoid delusions, hallucinations, auditory and visual, manic highs, which I didn't know what to call, and dark depressive lows. But I kept the truth from everyone. Certainly they knew of my erratic behavior. Certainly they knew I was unwell, but they didn't know why, and neither did I. I felt flawed. I felt sick to my stomach, and I didn't know what was going on in my head. I just knew something was wrong. But I kept the truth from my family. I kept the severity of my symptoms because I didn't know that's what they were. I just thought I was going, for lack of a better term, crazy. And I hate that word. I hate the way people label people as crazy with that word, but I just say it for lack of something better to say. It's a term I don't like to use, but that's how I felt. I felt like my mind was splitting in two. At 17 and a half, I was in a musical play called How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, playing a character they called Gatch. Gatch was this philandering businessman. He had a wife at home, but he was messing around with all the secretaries in the office. He was that guy. And I'm playing this character, and I believe that at any moment, the entire audience of 1,200 people, not one seat was open, was going to simultaneously rise, rush the stage, and end my life. Mr. John Fennell, the theater director, who was in the very back row in the middle, in the last aisle, last seat to the left-hand side, drinking himself into oblivion. He could never bear to watch his directed shows sober. Mr. John Fennell was the theater director. He was a failed actor, turned high school thespian director. He had a box haircut from 1982 that was charcoal gray for all the incessant smoking. He had a mustache from 1963, which was very awkward, but somehow he made it work. And if you did anything other than what John Fennell told you to do on stage, he'd take his left thumb, he'd place it in the right corner pocket of his mouth, he'd pop it out, making a loud, echoing, popping sound, and he'd say, "Heinz." He always called me Heinz. He would say, "Heinz, that's the sound of your head coming out of here." Anyway, that's what John Fennell would do, however inappropriately. But I ran to the lobby after fearing my death by the entire audience during a paranoid delusion. And John Fennell sat me down in the theater treasurer's chair, which was very fitting because at the time I was the theater treasurer, the kid with no conceptual math skills. That was a bright idea. And he sits me down. He says, "Heinz, can you please finish the performance? It's not even intermission yet. What are you doing?" In a drunken stupor. And I just babbled incoherent nonsense for the next 10 minutes. He had to call my mom. And my mom, Debbie Hines, came to pick me up. And she picked me up, and I'll never forget the look in her eyes as she gazed into mine. For I could see inside them that she saw within mine the depths of insanity brewing behind them. Very soon thereafter, she took me to go see my first psychiatrist, Dr. J. Kevin Rist. This guy. Dr. Rist was also a character. He wore V-neck sweaters that were too bright, like "Buddy, It Ain't Christmas, Turn It Down." He wore khaki pleated pants with the cuffs from 1967. And he was a kind man, but it turned out that Dr. Rist was on methamphetamines the entire time he treated me and his other patients. He was in his own pain, just like my biological parents, just like my dad's parents. He needed help and he wasn't getting it. Well, he would lose his license. His family would leave him. His patients would file a class action lawsuit against him, which they asked me to join, and I refused. I said, "I want nothing to do with this. He's gone through enough. He doesn't need more of this." Well, John Fennell, my theater director, and Dr. J. Kevin Rist would be the first of 9 people in my life that I would lose to suicide. 9 people I truly grew to care about and love. They would die by their hands. But those are stories we don't have time for. From 17 and a half in treatment until 19, it was a rocky road. I'd skyrocket into a manic euphoric natural high, and I'd come crashing down to this dark abyss of depression and pain. Because once you go up, you must come down. And I'd come crashing down with this black cloud over my head, rain, hail, sleet, and snow, and I thought I was the only one. Like I said before, feeling completely alone, surrounded by a sea of people who love me. But I couldn't see it. I could not see the forest through the trees. I could only feel pain, epic, emotional, and mental pain, lethal emotional pain. From 17 to 18, I lived with my mom, and I had punched too many holes in too many drywalls of her house. On my 18th birthday, she told me to kick rocks and call my father. Get out, she said. And my dad came to pick me up, clothes on the porch in the rain. They had just been divorced, which rocked my world. And I went to live with my dad, and we fought tooth and nail every day, yelling and screaming matches. We butted heads every day. It wasn't going well. He didn't understand me or my mental struggles, and I didn't understand him and his stern ways. He was like the drill sergeant who was never in the military. But his father was in the Battle of Midway. You see, my dad's way of communicating with me was yelling. But his dad's way of communicating with him was beating him. My dad's father would hit my dad as he grew up every time he would come home from a bar. That was his existence. So for him, yelling seemed natural. And we had these yelling matches every day. It was awful. It was an absolute nightmare. But September of the year 2000 would roll around. I'd be 19 years of age, and I began to think of suicide heavily. I began to believe that I had no other option, no other course of action to take. I was so very wrong. I wish I could have seen the forest through the trees. I wish I could have recognized in that moment that my thoughts didn't have to become my actions, but I couldn't see it. I wouldn't learn that till much later. On September 24th of the year 2000, I would sit at my desk and write that note that only 20% of civilians actually write when they die by suicide. I wrote, Mom, I love you, but you're not always right. Dad, I love you, but stop bringing the office home. This isn't work. I said to my little brother, who wanted nothing more than be the greatest DJ on the West Coast, you'd be a household name. I said to my sister, Elizabeth, who wanted to make films, you got this, go get it. I said to my best friend, you'll find another best friend, which is not how it works. I put that note in my shoulder bag, and that shoulder bag by the door. At 6 a.m, I entered my father Patrick's room. I startled him awake. He wears a breathing apparatus, a sleep apnea machine. He sounded like Darth Vader snoring. He took off that machine and said, Kevin, what's wrong? And I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to tell the one man who loved me the most in the entire world everything, but the voices were too loud in my head, and they would win the day. They told me I had to die. They told me I was useless. They told me I had no value. They told me my family hated me and wanted me gone. That's all I could hear. My dad said, well, I love you too, Kev. But at 6 a.m, I don't have to be working until 9 to go back to bed. And he fell as soundly asleep as quickly as he'd awoken. And I walked around to the other side of the bed, sat on the carpeted floor, and rocked my body back and forth in tears, begging myself to tell the one man who loved me the most in the entire world the truth, all the while hearing the voices telling me I had to die. Well, at this point, it's 6:30. I entered back into my room. My father came to my room at 7 a.m. He said, Kevin, I'm very worried about you. I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today? There it was. There was my opportunity to tell him everything, but the voices were too powerful and too overwhelming. And they had a grip on me. They had a hold on me. I said, no, Dad, I can't go with you. I have to be at City College today. Kev will go to the beach. Sorry, Dad, I can't do it. Kev will go to the movies. Sorry, Dad, I can't do it. Kev will do whatever you want. I just feel like you need to be with me today. And yet again, I turned him away. Finally, he said, well, Kev, you seem like you've calmed down because I made myself. So you seem like you calm down. Why don't I take you to City College? You take the bus home. I'll see you home at 6 tonight. I said, perfect, Dad. Sounds like a plan. We got in his car. I gripped my shoulder back to my chest because I didn't want him to find the note. He talked the whole ride, which is rare. Patrick Kevin Hines is not a talkative man. He speaks when spoken to. And when spoken to, he says things like this. Kevin, everything I say and do is with a purpose. I'm telling you this purposefully. That's a Pat Hinesism. You should hear his analogies. They're ridiculous. But that's what he said. We got to the corner of the City College campus. My father turned to me and said one of his favorite mantras, Kevin, I love you. Be careful. He said it every day. He calls me today to say it. Kevin, I love you. Be careful. I said, I love you too, Dad. I kissed him on the cheek as I had done since I was a tiny little guy. I told him I loved him. I stepped out of the car with my right foot and I stood. A tear rolled down my right cheek, off my chin, off onto my right lug's boot, onto the middle shoelace. I'll never forget that moment as long as I shall live, because it was the moment that I thought to myself, that's the last time I'll ever see anybody I love, and the last time anybody I love will ever see me as I watch my dad drive away, being completely content to die by these two hands from that lethal, emotional pain. I wiped the water from my face. I walked onto campus. I walked into the counselor's department. I found the most readily available counselor, and I asked her to drop me 9.5 of my 12.5 scholastic units at the college. Without batting an eye, without asking one question, she dropped those classes with no protocol, no who, what, why, when, or how, Kevin, you're dropping these courses, nothing. Leaving only my English class, and people have asked me over time, Kevin, why? Why did you keep your English class? It's very simple. It's rudimentary. It's not because I was going to become some literary master. Sure, I wrote a book, Cracked Not Broken, but there's 36 errors in the opening acknowledgments alone. It's not because I was going to become some literary master. No, I went to English class for one reason. The teacher was gorgeous. I just wanted to see her one last time. It would be the only rational thing I did all day. I left that class early and got onto a muni train. I sat in a cornered area of that muni train looking out of reflective glass at that man I loathed, the man that I hated, every fiber of his being, the man who would look in the mirror and have the other voice talk back to him and tell him how useless he was. And the train got to the bus stop, and I got off there, and I walked into a Walgreens, and I 5-finger discounted a Starburst and a Skittles. Don't worry, I've since paid them back. I went into the next bus stop, sat on that bus in the very back row in the middle seat looking out upon everyone, hoping, wishing, and praying that one person would see my pain and say something kind. Hey, kid, are you okay? Brother, is something wrong? Or pal, can I help you? And I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. No, I couldn't tell my father that morning. But on that bus, all I wanted was for someone to stop me. You see, with my father that morning, I was not what suicidologists call ambivalent. I couldn't see the upside. But on that bus, all I wanted was for someone to end my pain by asking me if I was okay, as opposed to me attempting to take my life off the Golden Gate Bridge. I wanted someone to stop me. This is very common. People who are suicidal often make pacts with themselves. If one person says or does this, I will. If one person says or does this, I won't die by my hands today. And mine was, if one person says, are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Or a variation of those three, I would tell them everything and beg them to save me. But on that bus, I began to cry, softly, then moderately, and then waterfalls flowing from my eyes and mucus dripping from my nose. I began to yell aloud on a crowded bus filled with people. Leave me alone, but I don't want to die. I'm a good person. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you? And now, if they weren't before, 100 people are looking down the barrel of the bus at me but saying absolutely nothing, except for one man. The man to my left says to the fellow next to him while pointing at me with his thumb with a smile on his face, what the hell's wrong with that kid? And that is what's wrong with some of society today. This innate human ability we have to see someone, anyone, in the greatest lethal, emotional pain they've ever experienced, but feel nothing for them but fear of them and apathy toward them. That's his or her problem, but it ain't mine. I formidably disagree with this notion. I believe if we are nothing else on this beautiful planet, we are at the very least supposed to be one thing together, our brothers and sisters and individuals keepers. We're not here for personal betterment or gain. We're here to give back to those we know, those we love, those we don't know from Adam, and those we don't even like. What we're not here to do is damage each other with our words or our actions. That much I know. Our purpose is to be kind to all, no matter their behavior toward us. My mom always taught me, be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, empathetic, and non-judgmental to every single person you ever come into contact with, no matter their behavior toward you. My father always taught me hard work because nothing good ever came without it. At 19, ready to die off that bridge, the bus gets to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot, and everybody deboards. And I'm on that bus, and I'm believing that I'm a horrible person. I'm believing that I have to die. And I'm crying my eyes out, hoping that someone will save me. And the driver gets to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot, and everybody deboards with their fanny packs and their foreign accents from all over the world and their cameras that weren't yet phones. And I walk on to the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, and I pace back and forth for 40 minutes crying like a child, hoping and wishing and praying that someone will stop me. I lean over a particular light rail, and I cry my tears to the waters below. And that's when it happened. A woman from my left approached me. She had blonde curly hair and these sunglasses you ladies love to wear in the heat in Las Vegas that don't fit your face, or Nevada that don't fit your face. And she asked me and approached me, and I thought, this is it. I don't have to die today. I don't have to do this. And then she pulled out a digital camera and said, will you take my pictures? I thought, you've got to be kidding me. How can you not see the pain I'm going through? How can you not see the struggle? Maybe the sun was in her eyes. Maybe she was trying to show me something beautiful and I didn't see it. Maybe I didn't catch it. Maybe there was a language barrier. I took her picture several times and she walked away. And at that moment, I said to myself, absolutely nobody cares. The furthest thing from the truth. Everybody cared. Every member of my family, every one of my friends, my acquaintances would have been there to rip me from that rail of safety, show me how much they cared. My brain wasn't allowing me to care as I desperately tried to cling to life. My brain was trying to kill me as I desperately tried to cling to life. At that moment, the voice in my head said, jump now, and I did. I catapulted my hands over that rail, and as I fell, it was an instantaneous regret for my actions, as I said earlier, and that 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. I fell 220 feet, 25 stories, at what I now understand to be 90 miles an hour, nearly the speed of terminal velocity. I hit that water like a ton of bricks, and the impact reverberated through my legs into my lower back, and it shattered my T12, L1, and L2 lower vertebrae. I missed on that day, severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. I went down in the water 70 feet, and I opened my eyes. I was alive, and I was drowning. It never occurred to me that by jumping into a giant body of water, I might actually drown. That just goes to show you there's a rational and illogical nature that leads to suicide, not rational, logical thought. You're not in the right state of mind, thus you shouldn't be making that decision or action in the first place. Suicidal actions actually aren't so much a decision as a compulsion to take one's life caused by inner turmoil or the inner critical voice or voices in your head. Mental pain often leads to suicide because of struggle and strife. Situational suicides occur when there are people who have lost their jobs, lost their loved ones, lost their spouses, been divorced, lost all of their trust fund, or some even have issues when they are entering a prison sentence and they don't want to go and they take their life. There are many reasons to suicide that suicide occurs, and it's very complex. It's not the same for any one person. But the one thing that remains among all of them is that lethal emotional pain that leads to believing that that's the only way out. And that's where I was on that day. In the water, as I flailed to stay afloat, I couldn't keep my body above water. I kept going down. Something then began to circle beneath me, something large and slimy and very, very alive. I remember thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't die jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and a shark is going to eat me. I really was in fear of my life, for my life. It turned out it was no shark at all. A man named Morgan McWard, who saw me on a television program on ABC Primetime Live with John Quinones. He does that show, What Would You Do? I'm on this show with John Quinones, and I said I thought there was a shark beneath me in the water a year later. And a man wrote into the show and said, Kevin, I'm so very glad you're alive. I was standing less than 2 feet away from you when you jumped. Until this day, watching this show, I never knew if you lived or died, but it's haunted me until now. By the way, Kevin, there was no shark like you mentioned on the show, but there was a sea lion. And the people above looking down believed it to be keeping your body afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind you. Now, you call that what you want, but I call that my personal miracle. A woman driving by in a red car saw me go over at the moment of my attempt. She called the Coast Guard. The singular reason the Coast Guard boat arrived to my position within 3 minutes before I'd set in hypothermia was because of that woman's phone call. In the hospital, one of the foremost back surgeons on the West Coast was supposed to be leaving for the day. He opted to stay, and he stayed for my surgery. The first and only of its particular kind. He invented it for my situation, saving me the ability to walk, stand, and run. There are 39 Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors. 99% of those who've attempted never get to see their families again. They're gone forever. Of the 1% that survived that fall, 39 people in 84 years, 26 remain alive today. Of the 26 that remain alive today, 19 have come forward to say they all had the same instantaneous regret that I did, but only 5 of us get the privilege to stand, walk, and run. They call us the most exclusive survivors club in the world. There's a book of the same name by Ben Sherwood about our story. I am making a point, my new friends. I get to be here. And getting to be here is a privilege and a gift, no matter the pain I'm in. Pain, my friends, is inevitable. It's coming for all of us if it hasn't already. But suffering is optional. It's a choice. Think about it like this. Every psychiatrist or psychologist we go see tells us we're suffering with this or we're suffering with that. My psychiatrist did it. They said, Kevin, you're suffering from bipolar disorder. I've heard it countless times all around the world traveling in my speaking that people who have these diagnoses are told by others that they're suffering. Then we adopt this narrative and we become the victim. We are not the victim. We don't have to be the victim. I had for years, I used the term, I'm suffering with bipolar disorder. For years, I blogged about it. I vlogged about it. I wrote about it. I put it in my book. But I now recognize that I've been in pain since the day I was born on 6th Street in a crack motel, but I've never suffered a day in my life. Here's why. I choose to challenge that narrative. Because if I say that I'm suffering, then I become the victim. Whereas I should be the hero of my own story, and you can be too. You can let your pain defeat you, or you can let pain build you brick by brick from the ground up into a stronger, more powerful, more resilient person with gratitude in their heart. Gratitude and resilience are two of the most brightest and most powerful protective factors from suicide. And that means actually having gratitude inside your worst and most horrible pains. That means having gratitude for the struggles in your life that led you to triumph after that. And whatever you're going through right now, if you're going through a hard time, if you're dealing with issues at home and you're really struggling, this is not forever. Today is not tomorrow. Just because you're going through hell right now doesn't mean you don't get to have that beautiful tomorrow, but you have to be here to get there in the first place. So be here tomorrow and every day after that. You are valued, you are loved, you are worthy, and you matter. And your pain matters. Your pain is valid. Your pain is worthy of my time and others. And it matters simply because all of you do. That much I know. But I couldn't see that on the day I attempted off the Golden Gate Bridge. I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I believed I was worthless, but I was wrong. I couldn't realize that my thoughts did not have to become my actions. My thoughts didn't have to own, rule, and define what I do next. Think of your parents. If all your parents' thoughts became their actions, how many of them would be in jail for road rage right now? Just ask yourself that question. If all of you would let your thoughts become your actions, how many of you would be in jail for road rage right now? If all of us let our thoughts become our actions, how many of us would be in trouble in some way, shape, or form? If all of our thoughts became our actions. That's why in the suicidal crisis you may find yourself in someday, you have to come to self-awareness and recognize that your thoughts don't have to own, rule, or define what you do next, thus you never have to attempt in the first place. In the hospital, I went from a wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane in a matter of 4.5 weeks after my 10.5-hour back surgery to refit my whole body with titanium. I had, they went in through my left side, a 23 staple scar across my left side that no amount of skin cream is going to make go away. I know exactly how many staples they put in me because when they pulled out the second staple after it was healing, I said, "Stop, that hurts. Give me the staple remover thingy." They said, "That's not what it's called." I said, "Give me the damn thingy." I took that staple remover thingy and I popped out number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 24, all the way to 23. I did it with my own hand. I needed to feel what it felt like from my own perspective, from my own right arm. Because I needed to know what never, ever to do anything like again. I have made a decision. I have committed to life until its natural end. I have regular and chronic thoughts of ending my life, but they'll never take me. I will never again attempt to die by suicide so long as I shall live, because I got to see what happened to the people that I would have left behind. Because I got to live. I got to see the pain they're in even today from what I did. I asked my father in our filming of the movie Suicide, the Ripple Effect that came out a couple years ago, the film about my life story. I asked my father if he still fears my death by suicide. He asked me to turn off the camera when we were filming. And he said, "Kevin, every time the phone rings." He didn't say when I call him. He said when the phone goes off in his pocket, each and every time, his first and every response is, "Kevin alive?" My actions did that. And I have to take responsibility for my actions. So today, I call my dad nearly every day just to tell him I love him and to let him know I'm okay. I used to be annoyed by how many people would ask me if I was okay or walk on eggshells with me or say, "Kevin, are you manic? Are you depressed? Are you paranoid? Are you delusional? Are you suicidal?" I used to be so upset about how many people would constantly check in with me. But then I realized if they didn't care, they wouldn't say anything at all. Look how loved I am. So I have to be grateful for that love and affection, appreciative of it. And you're damn right, I have to tell every single person that asks me these questions how I'm doing so they feel safe when they go to bed at night that Kevin's okay. And that's just fair. That's the right thing to do. I would be in 9 psych ward stays after my suicide attempt in the next 14 years, all the way up until a year and a half ago. All for suicidal crisis. The first 3 psych ward stays were involuntary. I was forced in against my will. The last 6 psych ward stays, I walked in with people that I knew and loved, and I said, "I need to be in there or I won't be here." I was self-aware with my diagnosis. I found what I call my epiphany and my gift. The epiphany came in the form of a 10-step routine and regimen to help keep me stable. And you can find that at youtube.com/Kevin Hines under the playlist series, The Art of Wellness. Just look up Kevin Hines, The Art of Wellness, and you'll find it. And this playlist is a routine and a regimen that I follow today to stabilize mentally, to stay here every day. It's comprised of common sense tools that are science-based and evidence-informed to help people with mental struggles. People as far as Peru, Africa, China, and Japan, and all across America have said while following it for 6 to 9 months, they see a dramatic improvement in their mental health. I want you to take it, I want you to use it, and I want you to change your life, and then I want you to write to me and let me know how it went. Ladies and gentlemen, my new family and friends, I'm going to end with this presentation with a quote that means the world to me. It's helped keep me here for all these years, and I want it to help you. And it goes like this. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That is why we call it the present. If y'all don't believe me, Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda said that, and talking cartoon turtles always know what's up. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is our gift. Let us always and forever cherish this day and every waking moment of this gorgeous gift we all get to call life. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening. I appreciate your time. Be well and be here tomorrow and every single day after that.
All right, thank you so much, Kevin. And for those of you that are still watching, I hope there's many of you, you can see why I had my mindset that Kevin Hines needed to be our guest speaker. I think if y'all got rocked like I did, I'd have to say it was the part about the tourists that asked, could you take my picture? So consider this. How many times do we, and myself included, walk down the hall, walk into a space, and say, hey, how you doing? Or somebody might ask you how you're doing. And before you could even reply and say, I'm doing great, or I might not be doing great, the person done already kept walking. There's things we have to think about. When I chose health, hope, and humanity as a theme, 2020 hadn't even hit yet. I also want you to consider that when someone breaks their leg, has a heart attack, whatever it might be, we as a community, what do? We fix a meal, we call them, we send flowers, we send cards, we go 100 yards out of our way. But when someone is diagnosed with bipolar or any other mental illness, I do not believe the phone calls occur, the dinners don't come, and the cards and flowers definitely don't come either. Mental health doesn't discriminate. Sees no color lines, no money lines, no political affiliation, gender, religion, pick one. It doesn't discriminate. I truly think Kevin's story mirrors the students we serve here at UNLV. It could be the most active student in registered student orgs. It could be the quiet student. It could be the student that hasn't been to work in a couple days. It's our job to check in on our neighbors. And then lastly, I just want to point out with COVID, things are only getting worse. Between social media and TV, we could do bad all by ourselves. So on that note, I want to bring in Dr. Luke Jensen from CAPS. He's going to give an introduction, and then we're going to come back to question and answers. So if you have any questions for Kevin or Dr. Jensen, please put it in the YouTube feed.
Thanks so much, LaToya. My name is Luke Jensen. I work in the Student Counseling and Psychological Services Center as a licensed psychologist and the Associate Director for Clinical Services. It's great to be here, and just want to say, hey, thanks so much, Kevin. It was a truly inspirational story, and really grateful that you shared it.
All right, so we do have questions coming in through the chat, and the first one is for Kevin. From your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions people have about mental health?
I think some of the most common misconceptions people have of mental health is that it's a death sentence. That if you get a diagnosis, that you can't live a good life. You can't be functional. You can't be well. You can't find hope or light or love. I think all of those are misconceptions. I think that I'm proof positive of that. You know, I found the love of my life, my best friend, Margaret Hines, after my attempt. I was able to have a family and a career and live a good life with hope in my heart after such a arduous time. I still have all the symptoms I've ever had. I think another misconception is that it can be cured. They can't be cured at the moment, but I still have all the symptoms I've ever had, but I live well with them by following that treatment plan. So I think that's, hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Kevin. The next one that came through is, with social distancing occurring, how can we support and reach out to those in need?
Can do right now with social media, with COVID occurring, is get on Zoom calls, get on FaceTime calls, get on Facebook phone calls, video chats with people you love and care for. Call and email or reach out to the people you haven't talked to in 5-10 years and let them know you care about them. Reach out to the people that you might have had beef with in some way before COVID hit and say, hey, I want to squash the beef. I want to be there for you, whatever you're going through. The best we can do in this time, since we can't physically be with each other, is to reach out on a regular basis and build that social connection. I hate the term social distancing. I think we need to physically distance, but socially come together online in forums that make sense to reach out to the people who are the most vulnerable. Reach out and talk to your family and friends via all these digital platforms so that we can use social media for good.
Dr. Jensen, this next one is for you. What are the top 3 things we can do to maintain a healthy mental and emotional attitude?
That's a really good question. And I think to echo what Kevin was saying too, I think first and foremost, just reflecting on what you're kind of currently doing to manage stress. I think one size does not fit all. So I think it's, again, reflecting on the attitude that you're taking. I think one thing Kevin was saying of like the suffering and kind of trying to change the narrative. So I think there's a lot of power to being what Kevin was saying. And I think that, there's this point of acknowledging like I am hurting and then kind of changing that narrative to what could I see myself doing despite how I am feeling, and certainly reaching out to your support system, asking for help as well, being open to and seeking treatment if needed. But I think it really comes down to, or boiling down to, like good self-care. So kind of reflecting on what you're doing to manage stress. Have you noticed changes in your routine? Is there something you need to introduce? Have you been losing connection and can be reaching out to others? Have you kind of failed to be engaging in things that were pleasurable or fun, and maybe needing to get outside more? I don't know if that kind of adequately answers the question, LaToya, but that's what I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. This next question is for you, Kevin. It's a little long, but I'm going to kind of shorten it and get to the point of it. Somebody wrote in and wanted to know, when you were at the office where you asked for your classes to be dropped, had that faculty or staff member actually stopped and asked you why or whatever it might have been, do you think that would have stopped you from heading to the bridge? And then secondly, do you have any advice for what higher ed faculty, staff, and students can do to support other students on campus?
So I'll answer both those questions with the same answer because I think it applies. Had that staff member been trained as they are today, because they have a different protocol now than they did back then because of what I did. In the protocol they have now, if someone comes in like I did and does what I did, they ask the question, are you thinking of killing yourself, and have you made plans to take your life? They're bold about it. It doesn't put the thought in someone's mind. That's a myth. It gives people permission to speak on their pain. Had they been trained and asked me that direct question, I would have told them the truth. Had they asked me why I was dropping all my courses, I would have struggled to find the answer. We would have gotten to a deeper conversation, I believe, and maybe it would have led me to ask for help. But they didn't ask me anything. And I think that was the biggest mistake. So to answer both your questions, I think that if you want to support students in a way that's appropriate and positive, you need to ask that blunt, honest, and true question, followed up with, have you made plans to take your life? Because you care, you're worried, and you want to be there for that person in whatever they're going through. We have to be more sensitive to others' pain. It doesn't mean we're always going to reach the right people. There are going to be people that hide it so well that we can't find it. That happens all the time. But at least you tried. At least you went for it. And just know it doesn't put the thought in their mind. Instead, it gives them permission to speak on their pain. Statistically, more people have told the truth in those situations than not.
This next one's for Dr. Jensen. If we see someone in pain or we're in pain ourselves, what are some immediate steps we can take in order to get the help needed?
I'll kind of, I guess, separate that into for if you see someone in pain and then if you yourself are in pain. I think if you see someone in pain, kind of building off what Kevin was saying, it's okay and encouraged to ask direct questions such as, you look down, are you feeling depressed? Are you having thoughts of suicide? And that can kind of direct how you kind of point them in the right direction. At the Counseling Center, we do offer crisis services for enrolled students that you can direct students to. There's also an online simulation training called Cognito. You can see the link on the CAPS website. It goes over like simulations and training of how to have difficult conversations with students about mental health, suicide, things like that, to address those kind of conversations. So I think, supporting them, the best thing you can do, again, is ask direct questions, refer to the appropriate resource. And then for if you're identifying yourself as needing help, again, I would encourage, reaching out to colleagues, your support system. There is the employee assistant program that faculty and staff can access to. I believe it offers currently 3 free therapy sessions and then can kind of get a referral from there. So don't hesitate or be afraid to kind of reach out for services when and if needed.
Thank you. I've got a few rolling in, and I've got to wait for them to finish typing before I can ask the next question. But someone did ask for LaToya, why are you putting so much effort out there to make a difference in the community? And I think it just starts with the fact that mental health impacts anyone and everyone. And I don't think there's anyone watching this today that can't relate one way or another or know someone who is struggling with some sort of mental health issue. I think we're also losing classmates, we're losing family members, and we're definitely losing UNLV community members. It's unfortunate, I think, that they're choosing suicide as a means out. So I think it's an awareness that we gotta have. It's a conversation we need to start having. I'm in the doctoral program, my dissertation is focusing on this. And so this is where I'm at, and this is, I think, what I'm supposed to be doing. So whoever asked that, I hope that answered your question. All right, some of the questions did finish, and this one is for Dr. Jensen. It says, I have heard in the past from students that they don't use CAPS because it takes months to get an appointment. Is this the case, and are steps being taken to remedy this?
So although it is true that it's sometimes difficult to schedule a pre-scheduled appointment when it gets further in the semester as our demand for services grows when you get towards midterms and finals. However, our counseling center does offer crisis services Monday through Friday during business hours, 8 to 5. So if a student is needing to be seen or speak to someone more immediately, they are encouraged to call, and then the providers can kind of figure out from there what appropriate services and not leave them hanging. So for pre-scheduled appointment, some students may experience having to kind of wait to initiate those services, but encouraging students and reminding them that there are the crisis services and to call and certainly utilize those as needed.
Kevin, another question for you. Knowing that a lot of students on campus are struggling, what are the top things that come to your mind that we can start doing to help support our student population?
I think giving them as many resources as humanly possible to combat what they're struggling with. I think giving them a reading list of books that benefit mental health and brain health. I think offering as many counseling sessions as humanly possible for low cost. I think that reaching out to your student population and letting them know how valued they are and how important they are. And I think all these things can help better balance their health.
Thank you. The next question that came through is, They want to know from you, Dr. Jensen, what do you think are the greatest challenges on campus regarding mental health?
So suicide's the second leading cause for the ages between 10 and 34. So that's certainly primarily the student body that we serve. So, I think college is a unique time where they experience significant stressors. There's a lot of adjustment, can be like adjusting to financial struggles, juggling academics, work, kind of getting into more intimate relationships, if you will. And I think all of that can kind of create a perfect storm for mental health issues. So I think all of those combined certainly kind of, again, can contribute to that. So I'm just encouraging, faculty, students, friends, family members, be aware, do your best to kind of notice changes, and don't hesitate to have those conversations with colleagues, friends, or students.
Definitely great advice. Another quick story to share. I had a faculty member on campus recently share that they had shared with their class that she too was struggling with COVID and just the distance and not having personal or social contact. And she had been seeing a provider as well, and the provider is actually out on leave due to having a struggle. So just something I want everyone to keep in mind is while we're thinking about our students that are struggling, we also need to think about our faculty, staff, and administration because they're going through the same struggles as our students. So don't forget when you check in on your students, check in on your coworkers, your colleagues, your neighbors as well. I am looking at the chat, and I want to let everyone know in the audience that time is dwindling. And so if you do have questions, please put them in the chat before we lose Kevin Hines and Dr. Jensen here. While I'm waiting for questions to come in, I do want to turn it over to Dr. Jensen so that he can share resources and how and when students can access them.
Thanks, LaToya. So, the Counseling Center does offer counseling services to our student body, which includes, as I mentioned earlier, crisis services. Currently, given the COVID pandemic, our services are primarily remote, but our office is open in the event that a student walks in the middle of a crisis or needing to kind of be seen for a crisis situation. So you're encouraged to, tell students that they can call, make an appointment, talk to someone on crisis services, things like that. I also wanted to go over a couple other things. One of them I mentioned, Cognito, something I would certainly encourage faculty and staff to complete. It's the simulation training as it pertains to identifying and learning effective ways to have difficult conversations, referring students surrounding mental health and suicide. The other one is something called Therapy Assisted Online. It's our online digital platform. It is free for anyone who has a UNLV email address. The information can be accessed on our Counseling Center website. It has a lot of short, effective modules as it pertains to things like stress, depression, anxiety, and a host of other kind of modules related to those things. And finally, there is the UNLV support team. This is an integrated team of professionals on campus with a commitment to kind of work to connect students to the appropriate resources. So there is an online referral form that if you are particularly concerned about a student that I'd encourage you to look at and complete, and that would initiate someone reaching out to them and kind of taking it from there to kind of connect them to the appropriate resource.
All right, well, I want to, again, start wrapping this up. I want to give a great thanks to Kevin Hines for joining us, and I also want to give a great thanks to Dr. Luke Jensen from CAPS here on campus. Next, I'm going to turn it back over to Savannah so she can talk about how we're going to proceed with the rest of the day.
Thanks so much, LaToya. I would also like to thank Dr. Jensen and Kevin for being here today. I hope you all learned something that could maybe save your life or a life someday. During this difficult time, it's so important that we take care of each other and take care of our community. And thank you, LaToya, so much for moderating this conversation. I appreciate you so much. As we wrap up here, just a few announcements before you move to your breakout session. This event was sponsored by the Administrative Faculty Committee and the UNLV President's Office. I also want to thank the following people for making this virtual event possible. Thank you to Abigail Costello and Kelsey Kaplan and the entire AFC Development Day subcommittee. Thank you to David Knowles from Campus Rec for his graphic design services, Deborah Gorov from Student Union Event Services, and Kirsten Dimmick and the SUE's Technical Services team for making this entire virtual event possible. Thank you everyone for joining us today. As soon as the live stream ends, you have a few minutes to run to the restroom, grab a snack before your 10:45 breakout session. So a little bit before 10:45, just go to your Google Calendar and click on the link that you received via email to join your chosen breakout sessions. The first one begins at 10:45, and then you're gonna leave, and then you'll join your 11:45. And again, if you have any technical issues, please Google chat or email afc@unlv.edu, and someone will assist you in real time. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.